Welcome. Today we are joined by our Mastering Home Food Preservation team with Purdue University Extension. My name is Amber Knoll Houlihan. Today we are going to be making choice salsa, and the recipe we are using comes from the So Easy to Preserve 6th edition cookbook on page 79. This recipe from the National Center for Home Food Preservation was tested for safety using various types of tomatoes, peppers, and onions. For this reason, the recipe does allow some wiggle room in which varieties you wish to use. However, it is critical not to alter the proportion of vegetables or add other ingredients not in the tested recipe. Doing so could alter the acidity level and make the canned salsa unsafe. Today we are using sweet bell peppers, the green color, along with Roma tomatoes and yellow onions. We will process these using the boiling water bath method. Equipment we will be using includes our boiling water bath canner with a rack that fits on the bottom and lid that fits snugly. Any large metal container may be used as long as it is deep enough for 1 inch of briskly boiling water to cover the jars and be no more than 4 inches wider than the stove's burner. This recipe calls for pint jars, so we also have here our jars, lids, and rings. Start by getting your canner ready. Fill the boiling water bath canner with an approximate amount of water that will cover the jars by 1 to 2 inches and heat to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. This is where bubbles are forming on the bottom, but not fully boiling. Have a ladle and second pot heating in case you need to add more or need to remove excess water. Next, select your jars and examine them for damage, nicks, cracks, or rough edges. Wash in warm soapy water, rinse well, then add jars to canner you have been warming. Bring to a boil and boil jars for 10 minutes to sterilize them, or use the sterilize setting on your dishwasher. This is absolutely necessary if your processing time is less than 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, keep jars hot. Jars that will be processed for more than 10 minutes do not have to be sterilized. However, you do need a way to keep them hot before filling to avoid shocking the jar. Inspect lids and ensure they are free of defects such as dents or flaws in the sealing compound. Wash bands and lids in warm soapy water and rinse well. Follow manufacturer instructions for heat treating the lids. To prepare the salsa, start by washing the tomatoes in running water. These need to be peeled, so we'll make a shallow X on the bottom of each fruit and then dip the washed tomatoes in boiling water for 30 to 60 seconds or until the skin begins to split. Using a spider spatula or slotted spoon, remove fruit from boiling water and submerge immediately in an ice bath, which is a large bowl of ice water. Peel off loosened skins and use a paring knife to remove tomato cores. Remove seeds and chop to 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch pieces. Size is important here because we want a consistent size between all of our produce. This will ensure an adequate heat penetration during processing and can affect the overall safety of our finished product. Peel, wash, core, and dice onions to 1/4 inch pieces. Usually when peppers are finely chopped in a salsa, they do not need to be peeled. Always check the full recipe instructions. Wash and core bell peppers. Remove the seeds and membranes before dicing to 1/4 inch pieces. Dice the peppers into 1/4 inch pieces. Combine prepared ingredients in a large stock pot. Add lemon juice and salt. The chopped tomatoes and diced peppers and/or onions are to be measured level in dry measuring cups. The lemon juice is measured in a liquid measuring cup. Use a measuring spoon for the salt. We are using commercially bottled lemon juice, which helps us maintain a minimum level of acidity in the recipe. For safety reasons, do not substitute vinegar for the lemon juice and do not use fresh lemon juice. Bring to a boil over medium heat while stirring. Reduce heat and simmer salsa for an additional 3 minutes, stirring as needed to prevent scorching on the bottom of the pot. Bring hot jars a few at a time to your prep table and quickly fill the hot salsa into the prepared clean, hot jars. Remove bubbles by inserting a plastic or rubber bubble freer along the edges of the jar, gently shifting the food so that any trapped air is released. Use a headspace tool to measure half-inch headspace and adjust contents to ensure proper headspace. Wipe jar rims with a dampened clean paper towel, adjust lids, and secure rings to finger tight. Back at our canner, the water should be 180 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's wanting to boil but not quite there. This is important as we are going to be dropping in very hot jars and we don't want too much of a temperature difference. Using the jar lifter, lift the jar by the neck below the ring, keeping it completely upright and gently lower into the water. If your canner has a rack that can be rested on the lip of the canner, secure the rack in place and set each jar on the rack. Otherwise, lower each jar to sit on the rack on the bottom of the canner. Once all the jars are in place, the water should be between 1 to 2 inches above the top of the jars. Add or remove hot water as needed. Cover canner with lid and turn heat to highest setting. Heat until water boils vigorously. Once water has reached a vigorous boil, set timer for processing time of 15 minutes. This is where having a clear lid can come in handy. Do not remove the lid during processing. Lower heat as needed, but always maintain a gentle, steady boil. If at any time the water stops boiling, increase heat to return to a boil and restart processing time. After processing is complete, turn off heat and remove canner lid. Wait 5 minutes. This is an important step that is part of the canning process. Do not skip the 5-minute wait period. Using jar lifter tool, lift each jar carefully from the canner, being certain to keep the jars completely upright. Place hot jars right side up directly onto dry towels or a thick layer of newspaper to insulate them from the cold counter surface. This cooling step is part of the entire canning process and is important. During cooling, space jars at least 1 inch apart, avoiding cold drafts, and do not cover or wrap jars. Let jars sit undisturbed for 12 to 24 hours. Do not touch the ring bands or flats until the jar is completely cooled. As jars cool and seal, you will hear a popping or pinging sound as the vacuum created in the jar pulls the flat down to seal. After jars are cooled, check each flat for a seal by pressing in the center of the flat. There should not be any movement or popping sound. Don't forget to properly label jars with contents and date packed. Keep in mind that recommended storage time for home canned goods is 1 year. If the jar does not seal and it has been less than 24 hours, you can reprocess the jars, freeze the contents, or store contents in the refrigerator and use within 2 to 3 days. If you choose to reprocess, inspect the rim of the jar for nicks that could have prevented sealing and use a new flat to reprocess. You will want to use these jars first, as the quality will be compromised from the increased cooking time. To store jars, remove bands and wipe the outside of the jars, taking care not to disrupt the seal. Screw bands can be washed and stored for later use. Store jars in a cool, dark, dry place, ideally 50 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. If you find a jar that has lost its seal or is showing signs of spoiling, do not use the food. Molds have fingers that reach far beyond what we can see in the food product. And there you have it, tasty homemade treats worthy of sharing with friends and family, although you may not want to.